How do crows raise such smart babies? A crow is born knowing almost nothing. This is not a weakness, it is the whole point. Most birds hatch with a significant portion of their behavioral repertoire already installed. They know what to fear, they know what to eat, they know how to navigate. The knowledge is genetic, preloaded, ready to run. It keeps them alive, but it also locks them in. What they are at birth is largely what they will be. The brain is mostly finished before the life begins. A crow hatches with almost none of that preloaded. It is, by bird standards, shockingly unfinished, helpless, dependent, cognitively empty in ways that would represent a catastrophic developmental failure in most species. And it stays that way, dependent, unfinished, still forming, for longer than almost any other bird on Earth. This is not an accident. This is a design. One of the most sophisticated developmental strategies in the natural world. And understanding it will show you something about intelligence itself, about where it actually comes from and what it actually costs, that most people have never considered. By the end of this video, you will understand not just how crows raise their young. You will understand why the way they do it is the only way that could have produced what a crow becomes. Stay with me. The nest. It begins in late winter, earlier than most people expect, February or March in temperate climates, when the air is still cold and the trees are bare, and the idea of raising young seems premature. But crows are not being reckless. They are being precise. The timing is calculated. By starting early, crow parents ensure that their chicks will be in the most demanding phase of their development, the phase that requires the most food, the most teaching, the most parental investment during the period of maximum food availability in spring and early summer. The calendar of crow reproduction is not driven by warmth. It is driven by the food supply their young will need when they are learning to be crows. The nest itself is a significant construction. Crows build with sticks, large ones for the outer structure, progressively finer ones toward the interior, lined finally with soft materials, bark strips, moss, feathers, sometimes hair. The finished nest is deep and sturdy, built to last not just one season, but sometimes several. Pairs return to the same nest site year after year, repairing and expanding it each time. The location is chosen carefully, high enough to be safe from ground predators, sheltered enough to protect against weather, positioned with sightlines that allow the parents to monitor the surrounding area for threats. The nest site selection alone, the assessment of competing variables, the projection of future conditions, is a cognitive task that most animals are simply not capable of performing. The chicks have not yet hatched, and already their parents have been thinking about their future. The hatching crow eggs incubate for roughly 18 days. The female does most of the incubating. The male feeds her. This division of labor during incubation is not just practical. It is the beginning of a pattern of coordinated parental investment that will define the next several months of every individual in the family. When the eggs hatch, the chicks that emerge are altricial, the technical term for young that are born helpless and require extensive parental care before they can function independently. They are blind. They cannot regulate their own body temperature. They cannot feed themselves. They cannot do anything really except exist and demand. For the first 2 weeks, the female rarely leaves the nest. She broods, keeping the chicks warm with her own body heat, feeding them the food the male brings, protecting them from the elements and from predators with the full force of whatever a crow can bring to bear against a threat, which turns out to be considerable. During these early weeks, the chicks are growing at a rate that is almost alarming to observe. Not just physically, though the physical growth is dramatic, from blind, featherless hatchlings to fully feathered fledglings in roughly a month. The brain is growing too. rapidly, forming connections, building the architecture that will eventually support everything a crow can do. And here is the first crucial piece of this story. That brain is not forming in isolation. It is forming in a social environment, surrounded by parents, embedded in interaction. Every sound, every feeding, every moment of contact between parent and chick is not just care. It is input. Data flowing into a developing nervous system that is building itself partly based on what it receives. The crow's brain is not just growing. It is being shaped by its parents before it can even see them. The fledging. Around 4 to 5 weeks after hatching, the chicks fledge. They leave the nest for the first time. This moment is simultaneously more dramatic and less final than most people imagine. The fledgling crow that lands awkwardly on a branch below the nest, or frequently on the ground, is not independent. It is not ready. It cannot fly properly. It cannot find food. It cannot assess threats accurately. It is, despite its full feathering and its considerable size, still a baby, still deeply unfinished, and the parents know it. What follows fledging is one of the most intensive and extended periods of parental investment in the bird world. The fledglings remain with their parents, fed by them, protected by them, constantly supervised, for weeks after leaving the nest. They follow the parents through the territory. They watch everything the parents do. They begin, haltingly, to try things themselves. This post-fledging period is when the real education begins, because everything that makes a crow what it is, the tool use, the problem solving, the social intelligence, the territorial knowledge, the understanding of specific humans in the local environment, none of it is instinct. All of it has to be learned. And the parents are the first and most important teachers. What parents teach the curriculum of crow parenthood is not a syllabus. It is not deliberate instruction in the human sense, sitting the young crow down and explaining how the world works. It is something more organic and in many ways more sophisticated than that. It is structured exposure, guided experience. The careful arrangement of a young crow's world so that what it encounters at the right time, in the right sequence, teaches it what it needs to know. Food is the first classroom. Crow parents don't simply feed their fledglings and move on. They feed them and show them. They retrieve food in ways the fledgling can observe. They bring prey items to locations where the fledgling can watch the handling and processing. They have been documented dropping food items near fledglings, not into their beaks, but near them, as if presenting a problem. Here is the thing. Now figure out what to do with it. Researchers studying crow families in the field have described this as scaffolded learning, a term borrowed from human education that describes the practice of providing just enough support to allow independent problem solving without doing the problem solving for the learner. The parent doesn't solve it, but the parent arranges the situation so the young crow can. This is not instinct. Instinct would simply drive the parent to feed the young. What crow parents do goes beyond feeding. It is teaching, imperfect, intuitive, not consciously designed, but functionally teaching nonetheless. Danger is the second classroom. Crow parents actively introduce their fledglings to the threats of their specific environment. They have been observed bringing young crows to the vicinity of known predators, not close enough to be dangerous, but close enough to observe, showing them this shape, this movement, this sound means danger. Remember it. More strikingly, they introduce their young to specific dangerous humans. In territories where particular individuals have been identified as threats, the person who throws things, the one who disturbed the nest, the one whose behavior pattern signals aggression, Parent crows have been observed bringing fledglings to locations where those individuals can be seen and responded to with alarm. The enemy is shown to the next generation before the next generation has had the opportunity to make its own assessment. This is cultural transmission, not genetic, not instinctive. Learned information, acquired through experience, deliberately passed from one generation to the next through active demonstration. It is structurally what human parents do when they teach their children which neighborhoods to avoid, which people to be careful around, which situations carry risk. The mechanism is the same. The content is crow-specific, but the architecture, experienced individual passes hard-won knowledge to naive individual through active demonstration, is identical. The helpers. Here is something that most people don't know about crow families, and that researchers found surprising when they first documented it systematically. Crows often don't raise their young alone. In many crow families, not all, but a significant proportion, the breeding pair is assisted by additional birds. These helpers are typically the offspring of the pair from previous years. Young crows that are old enough to be independent but have not yet established their own territories return to help raise their younger siblings. They feed the chicks. They stand guard while the parents forage. They mob predators. They participate in the defense of the nest and the territory. They are, functionally, aunts and uncles, non-reproductive family members who invest their time and energy in the survival of the next generation. From a purely selfish evolutionary perspective, this seems like a bad deal. Why help raise someone else's offspring instead of producing your own? The answer turns out to be more interesting than the question. The helpers are not being altruistic. They are doing something sophisticated. They are buying time. While helping at the family nest, they are learning. Watching how experienced parents manage the full cycle of crow reproduction, acquiring knowledge about the territory that will be valuable when they eventually establish their own, building social bonds with their parents, with their siblings, that may provide support and alliance later in life. They are essentially doing an apprenticeship, and the chicks they help raise are better for it. Families with helpers produce more surviving offspring. The chicks are fed more frequently, protected more effectively, given more opportunities for the kind of supervised exploration that builds the cognitive skills they will need as adults. More parents means more teaching, more examples, more exposure, more of the structured experience that builds a crow brain. The family is not just a reproductive unit. It is an educational institution. The long dependency. Crow fledglings remain with their family, staying in the natal territory, still receiving food from parents and sometimes helpers, still learning, for months after fledging. In many cases, young crows from 1 year are still present in the family territory when the next year's chicks are born. This extended dependency is unusual in the bird world. Most species push their young toward independence quickly. The parental investment ends. The young disperse. They figure out the rest on their own. Crows do the opposite. They extend the period of dependence far beyond biological necessity. The young crow could technically feed itself. It could technically survive, but it stays, and its parents allow it to stay. And the family continues to function as a unit of mutual support and shared learning for a period that, by bird standards, is extraordinary. Why? Because a crow's most important asset is not its body, it is its mind, and the mind takes time to build. Real time. Time measured not in weeks, but in years. The knowledge base, the social network, the territorial familiarity, the accumulated experience that makes an adult crow so effective, none of that can be rushed. None of it can be shortcut. It has to be lived. The extended family period is the crow's way of buying its young the most valuable thing it can give them. Not food, not protection, not even safety. Time. Time in a supported environment, surrounded by experienced individuals, with the space and security to learn at the pace a complex mind requires. The cost is significant. The parents are investing resources in offspring that could, in theory, be fending for themselves. The young are foregoing the independent territory building that their future requires. But the return on that investment, a young crow that enters independence with more knowledge, more skills, more social connections than it would have accumulated on its own, is apparently worth it. Evolution does not make investments that don't pay off. The play. There is something I haven't mentioned yet. Something that sits slightly outside the framework of survival and learning and investment, and that researchers initially struggled to categorize because it didn't seem to fit any of the obvious adaptive explanations. Crow fledglings play, not in a vague, ambiguous sense that might be explained away as practice behavior or random motor activity. They play in ways that are recognizable, unmistakable, and in some cases, genuinely joyful looking. They slide down sloped surfaces, rooftops, snowbanks, and climb back up and slide again. They engage in aerial acrobatics that serve no obvious purpose, rolling, diving, chasing each other through elaborate flight patterns. They play with objects. They play with each other. They play sometimes with members of other species, including humans who happen to be in the right place at the right time. Adult crows play too, but it is most intense and most frequent in young crows, in the period when they are learning everything else, when their brains are building themselves at maximum speed. This is not coincidental. Play in cognitively complex animals is increasingly understood by researchers not as a break from development, but as a driver of it. When a young crow slides down a rooftop for the third time, it is not wasting time. It is exploring the physics of surfaces, testing the limits of its own body, building the kind of flexible, exploratory relationship with the physical world that will later manifest as the ability to assess a novel problem and generate a novel solution. When crow fledglings chase each other through complex aerial maneuvers, they are not just having fun, though they may be having fun, and that in itself is significant. They are building spatial reasoning, developing the ability to model another individual's movement and predict its trajectory. Practicing the social negotiation of competitive interaction in a context where the stakes are low. Play is how the brain practices being a brain. And the crow family, with its extended dependency period, its multiple adult models, its safe territorial environment, provides exactly the conditions that play requires: time, safety, experienced observers, the freedom to try things and fail without fatal consequence. The crow that slides down the rooftop today is building the mind that will solve the 8-step puzzle in 5 years. What they become. A crow that has been raised well by attentive parents, with helpers in a stable territory, with time and space to learn and play and watch and try, emerges into independence carrying something that cannot be given any other way. Not just skills. Skills can be taught quickly. What this crow carries is integrated, embodied, deep knowledge. Knowledge that lives not in memory as a list of facts, but in the nervous system as a way of being in the world. The knowledge of someone who has done things, not just learned about them, who has tried and failed and tried again, who has watched and been watched and absorbed over years in a specific place with specific individuals, what it actually means to be a crow in this particular corner of the world. That knowledge took years to build, and it will take years more to complete. Because a crow never stops learning, never stops updating its model of the world, never reaches a point where it knows everything it needs to know. But the foundation, the cognitive architecture, the social intelligence, the habit of observation and assessment and adaptation was built in the family by parents who gave more than food, who gave time, attention, structure, the irreplaceable experience of being raised by someone who already knew how the world worked and who spent years showing their young, carefully and patiently, what that looked like. There is a question underneath this entire video that I want to name directly at the end. We talk about crow intelligence as if it is a property of the crow, something the bird has, something it was born with. But intelligence, real intelligence, the kind that can solve novel problems and navigate complex social worlds and build a life that is genuinely its own, is not just born. It is made by time, by experience, by the people or the crows who were there during the making. The crow that uses tools, that remembers faces, that forms bonds, that lives a life different from every other crow's life. That crow was raised by parents who stayed, who taught, who brought helpers, who gave their young a territory to learn, and the time to learn it, and the safety to fail and try again. Intelligence does not emerge from genes alone. It emerges from genes plus time, plus the specific experience of being raised by someone who invests in your becoming. Crows understood this in their own way, long before we had words for it. The smartest thing a crow ever does may not be solving a puzzle or remembering a face or using a tool. It may be staying, long after it has to make sure the next one knows what it needs to know.